everyone, welcome to my art tutorial here. We're going to be painting a popsicle. Ta-da! This is our finished product. This is my messy palette. It's fun. You can pick any color for your popsicle you like. Kind of feeling summery here today. Did a little bit of splatter. Did a little fun shadow and highlight exercise. All right, we'll get started. Okay, so I've got my image transferred onto my canvas. I'm working with a 12 by 12 inch canvas, but any size, any square in this similar size would be just fine. And you can paint on paper too. I want to ink in this sketch, so I like to use purple for that. So I'm going to mix equal parts red and blue and just give that a swirl. And I'm just drawing over my sketch here. You might want to dip your brush in water and then back into the paint just to thin it out. At this stage, it's a little helpful to help the paint spread a little bit. I think I'm going to give my popsicle a rounded edge here. And then I've got some shadows, so I'll just do a little thicker line in here. And there's a little shadow on this side as well. And at the bottom here. Now I also have some lines in here. They're actually highlights. But I do want to make sure I keep track of those highlights. So I'll go in a little lighter for the highlights here. Okay, so that's my sketch. Now we'll get adding some color. Every time I switch colors, I make sure to clean out my brush really well. So I just have a cup of water and I sort of rub it down at the bottom, make sure all that paint is out. Also have some paper towel on hand. That's really helpful just to clean out the extra water. Now we get to decide what color do we want to make our popsicle. It can be any color you like, your favorite color. I think I'm going to do a green popsicle today. And so I've got two brushes here. I've got a small brush and a medium-sized brush. I'm not too fussy with my brushes. I just want to keep it simple. So I'll do most of my work with the medium-sized brush, and I like to sketch out my painting for the fine details with the small brush here. Anything similar shape and size will be just fine. So let's mix up some green for our popsicle. Now I want it to be kind of a light, summery green. So I know that my blue pigment is very strong. Most acrylic paints are the same, so just want to start with a good dollop of yellow and then a very small amount of blue. We'll just kind of tiptoe our way in here. We can keep adding as we go, but it's hard to take it out. So just start small with the blue. And that's a pretty fun green color. I think I like that. I'm going to brush that on. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So you want to be careful. Some of these lines might still be a bit wet. Normally I just paint right over top of them, but there wasn't a lot of chance for these guys to dry. So I'll just paint around them a little bit here. Or you can just wait until your sketch is dry and then you can paint right over top, because this is a very transparent color. So you won't be hiding anything by painting over top. So you pick your favorite color. Doesn't have to be green. Any color is great. And we're just gonna add some highlights to this color and some shadows. So the same mixing will apply, the same rules will apply to any color. Basically add white to lighten and add a black or a dark color to darken. And I'll show you how to mix black, because I don't actually like to use black straight from the paint tube. Okay, so I've just made sure I'm covering most of this area except for the highlights in here. Just don't want to lose that. Okay, now this is going to take a few coats. So we will probably go between the background and our popsicle just to kind of let that dry. And yeah, we'll just rotate through the two. And then we can also do the stick itself. Okay. So I'm going to rinse out my brush, get any paint off of it, give it a good pounce in the bottom of your glass, just to get all that paint out. It's a very important step to get all the paint out of your brush. That should be pretty clean when you go to wipe it on your paper towel. That keeps it a lot cleaner as well for you to make sure you get all the paint out in the cup. Okay, so now to make this stick, I'm going to take a scoop of white and then just a tiny bit, like a little tip of yellow. Give that a swirl. And then it's got a bit of red as well, but just a small amount. So again, I'll just take a little tip of the brush here, and really a small amount goes a long way. We're just kind of looking for that light wood look that the popsicle sticks are. That's pretty close. So I'm going to brush that in here where it's white. And actually I will brush over the line here. And that'll act as a nice little shadow for us. Okay, so we'll go into the background. Now again, you can choose whatever color you like for the background. I kind of want my popsicle to stand out. So I'll keep my background simple and probably light so that the popsicle itself can stand out. So I think I'll do a light background. So I'm just going to mix up some white. We're going to need a lot too. So you'll want to think about that. So I'm going to take 2 good-sized scoops of white, and I might want to tint it in a certain color, maybe green, maybe yellow, just thinking it through. Sometimes it's nice to work with the complementary colors. So the opposite color on the color wheel to green would be red. So I could make it a bit of a red, just a tiny bit of red in that white. I think that's probably the route I'll go. I kind of like this cream color here that I've created. That's another thing I like to do, is work with the colors on my palette. So you know what? I don't think I'll be using that for anything else. I'm just going to scoop some of that into this white. So if you don't have that still on your palette, that was just white with a little bit of yellow and red. And I've just lightened it up even more now. So gonna go on here, and that's actually a really nice color. It's just kind of an off-white. Now I am gonna add a little bit of interest to the background, just slightly here. Once I get this whole layer filled in. So I'm just brushing the entire canvas in the background with this off-white shade. And don't worry if you overlap your lines a little bit here. That's fine. We can go back and touch anything up that you cover up that you want to show. And acrylics usually take a couple coats to get a nice coverage. So it looks like we'll need to mix a bit more paint. So I'll do those 2 colors again. So I've got this color over here, which is just a little bit of white, some yellow, and some red. And if they're not 100%, that's fine. I painted in a very loose style so that I don't have to worry about those kinds of things. And it's a little darker, but actually I'm thinking that might be kind of cool. So that's this color, and then I need to make this one again. So 2 scoops of white, and we'll use this color in here. So if you're trying to remake the same color, just retrace your steps. And don't worry 100% if it's not exactly the same. That's okay. Especially right now, because we're just doing the first layer. We'll do some more on top of this. Okay, so just making sure I got most of the background covered up here. Looking good. All right, Now this is probably dry. Let's see. I think I will go back to my green now, and I'll let the background dry a little bit here. Clean my brush out. Okay, so for our popsicle, we've got shadows and highlights and midtones. And right now we don't have our highlight in there yet. So I want to create that highlight color. So what I love doing is taking the color that I just used, so whatever color you used, and add some white. And just give that a stir. Now you might want to use your small brush for this because it's a little bit more detailed. Sometimes I'll just use, instead of painting with the wide direction, go with the narrow direction of my brush. And as long as that works, I'm happy with that. If it's too small for you, use your smaller brush. And just going in here where the highlights are. There. There's another highlight on this side that we didn't show yet. So let me put that in. And I'm going to leave a little bit of that purple edge, just a touch of it showing. Kind of nice to create a bit of an outline for us there. And there's a little bit of a highlight across the top too. Kind of wraps up here. And a little bit down here at the bottom. Okay, now we need to go in and add some more layers to this mid-tone green because I want to make sure that I have a nice contrast between the lights and the darks here. So just clean my brush. Let's mix a little bit more of that color, whatever color you have. So mine is green, and it was more yellow than blue. So I think I'll do a couple scoops of yellow and just a little bit of blue. Like I said, the blue is a very strong pigment. So you just have to be careful when using it because it can easily overpower the other colors. And that is close enough. So I'm just going to go in with another coat on top here. And I'm still avoiding my dark areas. I don't really want to cover them up too much because I do want to go over top of them with another darker color. And this will lighten it a little bit. So just fill in all these mid-tone green spots again, or whatever color you've got. It's okay if colors overlap other colors. It's the nice thing about painting really loose in this somewhat impressionistic style. Don't have to worry about those things. And acrylics are very forgiving. So if you feel like you've made a mistake, let it dry and just go over top of it with the color that you need to. So I did a little bit close to that highlight. That's okay. I'm going to go over it later. Okay, now I think we can mix our dark green and start to get that in there. So I'm going to add some blue into this mixture here. That's going to darken it up. If you have another color, I will show you how to mix black right now because it's actually really handy to know. So to darken any colors, you'll just want to mix yourself a black. which is 1 part blue and 1 part yellow and 2 parts red. I'm just going to clean my brush because it's really dirty before I get into that yellow. Okay, so 1 part blue, 1 part yellow, 2 parts red, roughly. You might have to tweak it a little bit because your scoop sizes may vary a little, and that's okay. And I also probably didn't need to mix that much, but that's okay too. I'll show you at the end. Actually, I've got another video of how to save extra paint. So at the end of the painting, when you're all done and you've got a palette full of paint, it's all muddy, you can save it. That's a pretty nice color. So to me, this is close to black, and color is relative, so it will read as black on your canvas. It doesn't have to be as black paint from the tube would be, as long as it's reading like a dark color. So that's how to make black. And then what I can do to darken my color is simply add a little bit of that to my color. So I'm just going to scoop some of that in here. Okay, and then I'll go in my dark lines with this color. So it's reading like a dark green, which is exactly what I wanted to have happen. I can do a little skinny line down here. It's helpful to think about where the light source is when you're painting. So by that I mean, where is the light shining on this popsicle? And I can see from my highlights and shadows, highlights are a little easier to tell. It's coming from this side over here because it's hitting this right-hand side here. And then anywhere that there's a dip and a bump, so the dip is where the shadow is, so that is recessed in, and then there's a bump up, so that's a highlight on the right, shadow on the left, so it goes recessed again, and then it bumps up. So just think about the whole thing as one big bump. You're going to have highlights on the right and shadows on the left, and that makes it a little easier through the process of painting. I kind of like this dark color here. It works well as a shadow, so I'm going to stick it at the bottom of the stick here. So again, think about your light source. So there's going to be a shadow on this left-hand side. Just going to be skinny because my popsicle stick is kind of thin, but read that. Okay, it's coming together nicely. Now I think we just need to maybe go back to the background. Let's see, we'll let that dry and then add another layer to that. So clean out my brush. Sometimes it's nice to work with the paint wet while blending, but other times if I want to thicken up the paint a little bit more because it's so transparent, I'll let it dry and then come back to it. Okay, so I want to get into the background again. I've got some paint left over. I think I'll need a little bit more, so I'm just going to scoop up what I've got in these containers here for this off-white color and add a little bit more white in there so I can keep going. And I know it took a lot, so you know what? I'll just take the whole bit here and mix that up. Okay, and you'll see how much better the second coat covers when you do this. And you can go on quite liberally, quite thick with your paint. Just going around the edges here, the popsicle. If you have a spot shining through, like I've got a little bit of the dark there, white is the only thing that's going to cover it. All my other colors are transparent, so I just need to use more white. So it might take a couple coats to cover something, but just keep in mind white is the only opaque solid color that covers over top of other colors. And you might want to have your paint thick at this point and kind of show some really nice brush strokes. That's totally up to you. So I'm just going to go around these edges. Sometimes it's nice to also not cover the whole background. You can let some of that, if it's darker or lighter, show through. And that just adds an interesting effect to the background. You can also think about the light and shadows in their background. So if your light source is over here, this side should be brighter and that side should be darker. So for that, I'll just fill it all in. This is basically all one color here. Again, I kind of like that dark edge. It just sort of defines that where the popsicle starts, like a little bit of an outline. And that's a good tip to get a thin line. So just painting close to it over top, and you get a nice thin line there. There's usually a lot of paint in your brush too, so you can use it and scrape out any of the extra paint before you go get more paint from your palette. All right, that's starting to fill in really nicely. It looks pretty solid. I'm happy with that. I'll go to the popsicle now, I think. Or maybe we finish off this background. Let's finish the background off and then we'll just have the popsicle to paint. So it can just stay a solid color if you like, but I always like to give my background a little bit of interest. So I'm just going to go straight with the white, and I'm going to lighten this side a little bit and then fade it out on that side so that it looks like it's going from light to dark here. So I want my brightest side to be over here on the right. And for this, I won't brush it solid. I'm just going to brush it loosely, so I can still see my background a little bit underneath. I just want to create some interest here. Have fun with these brush strokes. It's where your personality comes through. And then I'll just taper it off over on this side here. So really just put the white over on this side, maybe a couple little brush strokes over here just to make some interest. Okay, And then perhaps we darken this a little bit as well, just to create that light to dark effect. So I will create a little bit more peach, which is going to be yellow, equal parts yellow and red, and a bunch of white. Now that's still pretty dark, so what I think I'll do, instead of adding a bunch more white to this, what I'll do is just add some of this, a little bit of this, to a bunch of white over here. That's a good tip, so you're not mixing so much paint. If you drastically need to change something like that, if I want to make it much lighter, just instead of fighting with all that paint, take a little scoop of it and move it over, and then you don't have to add so much white to it. Okay, so I've got a little bit of a darker shade, and I'll just put that over on this side here to create a bit of interest. Now my popsicle is kind of floating here, so perhaps we add a little bit of this shadow here. And imagine it sitting on a little table, a white surface. Okay, and just keep going with this color over here, kind of working from this way over across and just fading it out as you get across to the other side. I like working fast, and that way you can kind of blend things right on the canvas. And maybe we go right to the popsicle here. And bring a little bit of it over here. Not much left on my brush right now, but I'm just dragging it across so that it doesn't feel so lopsided there. Awesome. Okay. Now I'll take a little bit more white and just go over top of this just to balance it out. So I'm just going to take the brush and go straight. Actually, no, I lied. I'll take my white, I'll mix it in with this dark color, lighten it up a shade here. So whatever color you had, just add a little white. A few brush strokes. Keep it interesting. And a touch more white. This is just to create a kind of neat effect with the brush and the background here. If you want to keep your background solid, one color, you can definitely do that. It's your painting. You decide what you want to do. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. I just feel like a couple white spots might balance it out a little bit here. All right. Looking good. Okay, I'm going to get back into the popsicle. So I'm going to clean out my brush. Okay, and I'm going to make some more green and just give that another coat. So that's our third coat of green. So 2 scoops of yellow for that. And a tiny bit of blue. I'm going to add a little bit more blue because mine is a bit darker. in my painting. Okay, and as long as you're close, that's good enough. That's pretty good. Okay, so now I'm just gonna go over this layer again. And at this point, you don't have to go over the whole thing. You can let some of the color underneath show through. This color is a little bit lighter than the one underneath, so I can let some of that underneath color show through here. And this is just giving it another better layer to kind of solid, make that a little bit more solid, not so see-through, more opaque. The only way to make it a little bit more opaque is adding white, but I really wanted to create this darker green here, so I don't want to lighten it too much with white just yet. Okay, that's a nice coat. Looking good. Rinse out my brush here, and I think I'll just go into the darks one more time. So I still have some of my dark color in here. If you don't, just mix in a little bit of your black with whichever color you're using for your popsicle. And I'm just going to darken that up one more time. Okay, and then I want to show you something really fun. These popsicles usually have some kind of speckles on them, depending what's in it. Maybe it's a yogurt popsicle. So I'm going to take the small brush and just dip it in the water and then into my black paint. And if you're a little nervous about how this is going to work, I'm going to do a splatter. Test it out on the paper towel. And that looks pretty good. So I just want to put a little bit of splatter on this popsicle. Gives it a little texture. Maybe a little bit more. Makes it look kind of like, you know, there's something in there. You can even just use your brush and do little dots here and there. Give it some interest. Just kind of randomly place them. Okay. Clean my finger and my brush. I got a little splatter on my background, so it depends. If you like it, leave it. If you don't, just brush over it. I think I'll brush over the splatters on the background because I'm not sure if I really want them. I want it to be sort of on my popsicle here. So that's the beauty of acrylic paint. No such thing as mistakes, just happy accidents, like our friend Bob Ross always says. You can fix it, don't worry. Okay. Now I want to do a little bit more highlights on our popsicle. So now we're going to start to lighten that color, whatever color it is. So I will mix a little bit more green, and let me just get some more paint here. So my green is mostly yellow, so I'll do 2 scoops of yellow and a small, just the tip of the brush of blue. I'll go in with a little bit more blue because I'm going to take some white after this and lighten it up. Okay, so as long as you've got something close to what you just painted on your popsicle, that's good. And then take some white, and we're just going to lighten that up, and it's just going to gradually get lighter and lighter till we're at the lightest part, which is the highlight. Okay, I'm still using my medium-sized brush here. And I'm just going to paint in a few brush strokes. I like to paint in a very loose style. So you could call it impressionism, but basically it's not very over blended or anything like that. Now some of my spots might get painted over. That's okay too. We can always go back and make more. I'm just kind of randomly hitting spots of the popsicle here. And then we'll think about the real light spots. So I'm still keeping some of that dark color behind there. Okay. I'm going to add another scoop of white into this color. Now see, I've got a lot of color in here, and it's hard to lighten that because there's so much paint. So what I'm going to do is, instead of adding a butt ton of white paint to that, I'm just going to take a scoop of this, move it over here, get some more white paint. Just got to load up my palette here with some more white. Okay, and then take a bunch of white and put it in here. A lot easier than dumping a bunch of white into that and only using a little bit of it. Okay, now I want to start to bring out some of these highlights a little bit more. So you just add white to whatever color your popsicle is till you got a nice highlight there. I love doing little squiggly lines. It makes it really interesting for people when they're looking at your painting. It's a little bit of light down here. Most of the light's going to be on this side here where the light is hitting that, and then a touch on these ridges. Looking good. Okay, now you can also splatter with the light color. That would be kind of fun. So a little water helps to splatter. So I just dip my brush in a little bit. Again, try a test sample if you're not sure. That works pretty good. And, you know, do as much or little as you want to. I think it just adds a little bit of fun interest to the piece. Now the only other piece I want to get to a little bit more is our popsicle stick. So I'll rinse out my brush. And let's see, again, trying to use what you have on your palette. If you've got something that's close, what I want to do is just maybe add a little bit of a softer color to the shadow. So I've got this peachy color here. What you'd want to do to mix that is white red and yellow. And I'm just going to put that on here and soften that shadow up, maybe a little bit down the side as well. Don't want to completely cover my shadow. I want it to still be there. Okay, and then I'm just going to take some white and put that in another spot here. Alrighty. Rinse out my brush. And it's a little dark under there. Just a little bit dark looking. So what I'll do is just make a little bit lighter version. So again, take some of your black and then just mix it in to the color here of the popsicle, this darker color. A little bit more. I just want to soften that color up a touch. Okay. That's a bit light. A little bit more. There we go. You can run this down the side as well. Use your small brush if you feel more comfortable with it. I've just gotten used to big brushes over the years, so kind of used to that. Now this is a good color also to lighten up in our popsicle. So you can do that as well, just to add a little bit of interest to that shadow. It's always nice to lighten up shadows a little bit. So again, I'm just kind of doing a dashed line or dots here, not really a solid line. If you want to lighten up some of those spots, you can. All right, it's looking pretty good, guys. Now you just kind of want to look at your piece and see, is there anything that I need to address, you know? Maybe put it up across the room and check it out. That's an easier way to see it. I've noticed a little bit of, I want to darken this up just a touch on the side here, so I will go with Baby Bear for that. Okay, and I'm just going to use my black. Just darken that line a little bit, because this is the dark side here. The dark side of the painting. Okay, underneath a little bit as well. Just reaffirms this is a real object, it's 3D. Okay, and then I will just do a little bit of green with the dark here to soften it up a touch. And then we're done. Ta-da! Fabulous job, guys. We'll see you in the next tutorial.